Hi, I am Jon Cryer, and welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Always a relief to find out you're talking to the real person. Again, Jon Cryer or some guy on the internet. I'm
Some
hyped for
guy
this.
does a very good Jon Cryer
Yeah,
impression.
just in case I had a second set of questions about crypto, all that kind of stuff.
Got to be prepared.
Yeah,
Welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
so
That
much
was
better than that
amazing.
last guy I spoke to that was just
Yeah.
pretending to be you. So, Jon Cryer, welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. By the way, belated happy birthday to you for a few days ago.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm aging. I thought, this was a big one. I
Yeah,
thought, oh, okay, this is it. It's the downward spiral. It will be very visible. But so far, I look fantastic.
you do, don't you? Aging in reverse, you're basically Benjamin Button. It's incredible.
Yes, clearly, that is what is occurring.
Yeah. So both of your parents are actors and your mum's a playwright too. What's the best advice they ever gave
That
you?
they ever gave me. Um, Mostly, you know, they actually tried to not they haven't. Okay, I'm sorry. They when they discovered that this was what I wanted was probably around. I was probably around 13 years old,
Right.
and I think they both had reservations because they were both in the theater in New York City, and it can be incredibly difficult, and it's not a fair business. And watching your child go into that, it's sort of like watching your toddler walk into traffic. So they did support me. My mom sent me to a theater camp that changed my life. It was a place called Stage Door Manor in upstate New York, and so they were supportive, but they tried not to give me real advice.
Hmm.
Although interestingly, I guess there was one thing my mom told me. My mom is a playwright and a composer, and she wrote a play that we were doing sort of a tryout production up at Williamstown, and and at one point, I was as an actor, I was disagreeing with how I should be portraying the character, and she looked at me and she was like, I know who this character is. I wrote this, and I was like, oh yeah, and it made me realize that you have to get you have to get in working relationships with people you trust, like your mom, and then you have to trust them, which means that if my mom is telling me, hey, there's a thing in this that you're doing as this character that isn't fitting what the narrative is going for, then you really have to take that in and say, oh, okay, and that has really helped me. That has made me. It has changed my philosophy of how I deal with all directors and writers and producers now, because I try to get into business with people that I trust and then actually trust them.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And going back even before that, you starred in a 1970s, and everyone knows what I'm going to say, Zestabs vitamin commercial with
Does
not
everybody know that? I'm not sure
they do
everybody knows
now.
that,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Right. They're finishing, they're saying the sentence with me. And of course, you starred in that with your mum and your beloved fake sister. But can
Yes.
you tell me, there's a cardboard cutout standee of the three of you. Do you own one of those?
I do not own one of them. My mom still has the cardboard cutout
Oh,
standee.
really?
I do have one of the actual bottles. I found it on eBay out of nowhere. I found one of the bottles that still had the little cardboard picture of my mom and I
Oh, wow.
on it. So I got that, and my mom hooted with laughter when I showed her that. But yeah, I wish you told me that you were going to ask me about this, because I could have brought it and shown it to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's for next time. We're going to
For
do
next
some
time.
pickup shots. It's fine.
Yes. Some post-production.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm filming this from a private jet flying to where you are now.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Great. Now, are you in the UK as we speak?
I sadly am, yes.
No, why is sad? Why is that sad? Is it
Mm,
raining today or something?
no, that's why I'm sad. I hate it when it
Oh.
doesn't. Yeah. My motor's drying up. It's terrible.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Here in the States, it's not all rosy either. So,
Mm-mm.
hopefully that will make you think better of where you are.
It does, although I think that, not to get too political, but I think that, and I will, but the UK is somewhat mimicking the US more than I would like it to at the moment, let's say.
Yeah. Well, hopefully our example will show the world what not to do.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Some of the other stuff you do is great though, so it's
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah. Every now and then we hit it out of the park.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
getting our own version of SNL apparently, so
yeah, that's not so
there's
terrible.
that, I guess. Now, earlier on you mentioned you went to Stage Door Manor and you were there when you were 14, and my understanding is you went there for 4 summers. But can you please explain to me how Robert Downey Jr. got credited for your subway suicide jump? It wasn't even Matthew Broderick.
You're right. You're right. If okay, so this is a long to explain to your audience, Sarah. They're going to need a little bit of context on that.
We're going
Thank
to
you, by the
sell the
way.
book at the end. It's fine.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I wrote a book years ago, and obviously, Sarah, thank you for reading it. I hope you enjoyed it. It was really a great fun to write. But I did remember this thing that had happened to me back in my summer camp. This thing that I did that I was very, very proud of. A lot of famous people have gone to this camp. Robert Downey Jr., Natalie Portman, Zach Braff. I mean, there's lots of them. And uh, at the time, uh, when I first went there, I did not know that I necessarily wanted to be an actor. But one of there was an acting teacher there who was very serious and would have these very young kids do these very serious exercises. And he wanted to do one where that was I guess it was inspired by the Son of Sam, which had been a serial killer who'd been stalking New York. He said,
Yeah.
I want you to think that you're on a subway platform and everybody knows there's a serial killer, and I want everybody to communicate the unspoken fear. And I went. And he said it. And then at some point during the thing, I'm going to clap my hands, and that means that the subway train is coming into the station. And I remember I said, okay, I'm going to wow this teacher. I'm going to make a choice in this particular acting exercise in this acting class that is going to just blow him away. And so I came out on the subway platform, and I didn't seem scared at all about the serial killer, and I didn't seem, and it sort of gave the vibes that maybe I'm the serial killer. But that's not the twist I was going for. When the acting teacher started clapping his hands and the subway train came into the station, I jumped in front of the subway. I was actually playing somebody who was suicidal, uh, and that took his breath away. And it was a triumph for me because I had made a choice that he had never seen before. And this story became a legend in Stage Door Manor in the camp.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, "Oh, that day that an actor totally showed up." The acting teacher and like shocked him. Uh, and and then this wonderful writer named Mickey Rapkin wrote a book about Stage Door Manor. So it was kind of the ultimate, tribute to this amazing camp. And he said, yes, there was an actor who just knocked the acting teacher on his ass that day, and that actor was Robert Downey Jr. And I was like, what? No, no, it was me. It was not Robert Downey Jr. So in my book, I took great exception to that. Now, by the way, nobody cares about this. Nobody cares. I
I
am the
care about
only
this.
one. Thank you, Sarah.
You're my favorite person in the Avengers, and I will not have you credited like that.
You will tolerate no dissent
No.
on that. Well, thank you, Sarah. But yes. So if you happen to read Mickey Rapkin's book about Stage Door Manor, it's called Theater Geek, and it is a wonderful book. Other than that glaring error that should not be lost to history.
Absolutely not.
You understand my rage?
I'm mad about
I
it.
hope.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's why I set
good.
this thing up, just to talk about this. And
Yes, that is what America and the UK have been waiting for.
yeah, I mean, the rest of these questions are just going to be ticking boxes, really. I mean, I've
Yeah.
done the important stuff up front.
You're phoning it in. From
Yeah,
this.
pretty
Well,
much.
literally, we are doing
Yeah, we
this.
kind of are doing that. On my Nokia 3210. It still works. It's still on its first ever charge. It's incredible.
Hey, nice.
So you, of course, played Ducky in the 80s classic Pretty in Pink. I love a story that you told in your memoir about your second round of auditions, where afterwards you had a chance encounter with John Hughes, who's the writer of the film, and you happened to tell him how much you loved his writing in National Lampoon. Do you think details like that can make a massive difference in auditions? Not just auditioning for the part and really thinking about the role you're auditioning for, but also thinking about who wrote it and who directed it and just knowing their body of work too?
Oh yeah, that makes a huge difference. I mean, that is something that I'm really grateful for the internet on, because very often I'll get scripts and go, wait a minute, I don't know any of the people involved in this, and it'll give me a real leg up to find out information about them, and that's a very big deal. I don't know if me talking to John Hughes got me the part. But we certainly did have a connection, which was nice.
Hmm.
And I mostly it was a way for me to diffuse how nervous I was,
Right.
because I knew this was a big deal, even though Breakfast Club had not yet come out. Everybody was a buzz about the script to Pretty in Pink, and Molly was already a huge star, and I was doing a play on Broadway at the time, and I just felt like, okay, well, I've got a real shot at this, and I hope I don't blow it. And actually, Robert Downey Jr. was apparently my closest rival in that. Apparently, Molly wanted Robert Downey Jr., but unfortunately, she got Jon Cryer.
Yeah.
Too bad. Sorry, Mal.
Apparently, when he found out he didn't have the role, he pretended to jump in front of a subway.
Yes. It all makes sense
Yeah.
now.
Just a sandwich, though. He wasn't taking any risks there.
No.
Would you attribute to that movie's lasting success and popularity? It's still screened sometimes in the UK, and I see it regularly on TV. What about that film do people still love?
I think it's a lovely, simple story that is very, very true to its characters. And you can sort of feel that kind of authenticity when you're watching a film. That is actually one of the grittier John Hughes movies.
Yeah.
And partially, by the way, it's because Howie Deutsch actually directed it. It was produced by John, but Howie Deutsch directed it, and and he just had a slightly less, like, you could tell in Breakfast Club, John Hughes wanted these kids to be sort of iconic. He wanted them to be sort of elevated stereotypes of young people in a way that was, and he knocked it out of the park. I mean, that I love that movie. But Pretty in Pink was a smaller story, and it was a little more nuanced,
Yeah.
and it's also interesting because it dealt with class in a way that a lot of John Hughes movies didn't really deal with ever again. A lot of teen movies didn't deal with at the time, and so I think that's one of the reasons that it still resonates.
You later revisited Ducky and dressed as the true star of the film in an episode of Two and a Half Men. Can you tell me, was any of that the original costume? I know you lost the shoes to Planet Hollywood.
No, as a matter of fact, the trick of that was that they had to find a costume without infringing on the copyright that Paramount Pictures owns.
Oh,
So they
really?
actually it had to be different. I mean, at one point we had to, in Two and a Half Men, we had to play the flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
but again, we had to wear costumes that made you know, okay, that's the flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz, but didn't actually look like the flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz. It had to be different enough that there was no copyright infringement. So no, sadly there was not. There was not one particular article of clothing that was from the original. I've also played Ducky in there's a sketch comedy show called Mr. Show
Yeah.
that was a big deal here in the States, and that was the first time I sort of donned the Ducky drag. Uh, but it's always, I try to be respectful about it.
Yeah, of course. And you later recreated the Try Little Tenderness dance on the James Corden show. Did you remember much of Kenny Ortega's choreography, or did you have to go re-watch the film a bunch of times?
I did have to rewatch it. I had forgotten a fair amount of it. And yeah, Kenny Ortega, I think, is kind of I'm surprised he's not more known because he really, as a choreographer, did a lot of like the most distinctive choreography of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Incredible career that guy had. Yeah, I'm surprised that I mean, and he's been a director and he's been, wildly, did High School Musical
Yeah, I
and,
was gonna say, yeah.
he's had incredible success in his career and it is all deserved because besides being a very talented guy, he's also super nice. I actually had a lovely moment. One year they had the governor's ball, which is the party they have after the Oscars,
Yeah.
at the Beverly Hilton, and I don't remember what year this was, but I had presented, and so I was at the governor's ball, and everybody was going to various rooms for there was special private parties in other rooms of the hotel, and I got into one of the elevators and it was packed, and we were all, and somebody said to me, "Oh, I just wanted to say I love that dance you did in Pretty in Pink," and I was like, "Oh, thank you." That was actually choreographed by a guy named Kenny Ortega.
Hmm.
And Kenny was in the elevator. He was like three people back, and
Oh,
he
wow.
said, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, hey, Kenny, how's it going?" So it was lovely that I just happened to be giving him credit when he happened to be like 3 feet behind me.
It's more genuine that way, isn't it, when they overhear it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I hope so. I
That's
hope so.
amazing. I love this story too about because obviously you come from a theatre background, and when you originally filmed that scene and you had been practicing it and nailed all the moves and all that kind of stuff, and you were showing the cast and crew for the first time, when you finished it, nobody clapped. It was because they immediately started working out the shots they had to do to capture everything that you were doing.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I come, as you said, I come from theater, so there's showmanship, and whenever you're going through numbers, you do get some sort of a reaction when you've really nailed them. You really you look around and everybody in the rehearsal room goes, yeah, yeah, or whatever. It's like, yep, we nailed it. Yes, that's great. And so when I first ran through the dance for Howie Deutsch, the director, and Lauren Schiller, the producer, um, uh, I got no reaction. Now, and crew members have a million things they have to do.
Sure.
They're working on stuff, so they have an excuse not to react. But I got nothing from the director, you know, and uh, and I went up afterwards, and I was still like huffing and puffing. And I said, "Hey, Howie, how'd you feel about it?" He said, "Oh no, it was great." And I was like, "Okay, that doesn't sound real good." And he said, "Well, but now I have to shoot it." And it's because he realized that he had only slated half a day to shoot that, and it was going to take way longer than that. And so, but again, the when you he was a first-time director, and this was going to put him, a day behind schedule on his first or second day. I was really surprised that he went through with it and he chose to put himself behind the eight ball for the
Yeah.
rest of the shoot, because that was very gutsy on his part.
Absolutely. Now I have to speak about next. So I loved the 80s. I loved every movie that came out in the 70s. I just wanted to absorb myself and everything. And I was so excited to hear that there was a fourth Superman film coming out. And finally, he was going on a quest for peace, having destroyed
Mm.
everything. He was going to pursue
Yes.
peace, which I thought was very
It's a new
important.
chapter for
And
Superman.
I inherited a massive fear of nuclear weapons at that time, which I had no knowledge of,
Oh
mostly
no,
because
I'm sorry.
I understood that they could make these super villains that could fly around and do stuff.
That is how that works,
Give
yes.
Superman a cold when he gets scratched by them and stuff. And so
Yes.
I remember seeing it when it first came out, and I remember your character. And years later, when I used to watch you and stuff, I never even connected that that was you. Obviously, it was before the internet and stuff like that. So that was a fun moment for me, realizing you were Lenny Luthor. How much fun was that for you, flying through the air in a car and flying with Superman and getting to do all that stuff? Or was it just uncomfortable?
There were moments of discomfort. I was a total comic book nerd growing up.
Yeah.
Loved Star Wars. Seeing Superman, the first movie, was just a revelation for me. It so transported me, and it made me go, oh, okay, movies are magic. Movies are amazing things. And one of the reasons I wanted to be in movies was
Mm.
because of Superman, the
Yeah.
movie. And so I had loved Superman 2, and then Superman 3 was kind of, I don't know if this is a great movie.
Yeah.
But now, Superman 4, when that script landed on my desk, I was so excited because they had reassembled the cast from the first one.
Yeah.
And the script was terrific. And Christopher Reeve had actually written the story of the script. He'd had a lot of input, and it was really fun and touching and interesting. And I was so excited to be a part of it. So excited to work with Gene Hackman, who I just worshipped. And and it was going to shoot in London. I was like, oh my God, we'll be shooting at Pinewood Studios where they shot Star Wars, and this is going to be amazing. Uh, and uh, and I got to London, and literally as I was on the plane, I was reading the new draft of the script. And I was like, oh, it has a bunch of new scenes that hmm, I don't know if these scenes aren't quite as good as some of the other ones that they had. They were doing rewrites there was a new introduction scene for me that I was like, oh,
Right.
this is not nearly as good as the old one. I wonder what's going on here. Turns out the producers of Superman 4 were different producers.
Mm.
The original producers were like, we spare no expense. And the new producers were like, we spend no money. And they were famously cheap. And in fact, had done some very dodgy financing deals. They were now making three movies at once
Wow.
that all were in perilous financial straits. So what I did not know at the time was that the movie would be rewritten to suit a lesser budget over and over. I mean, constantly it was getting rewritten. We had a whole week of shoots that got just canceled, just taken off the schedule, and that whole segment was cut out of the script. Um, and so I had been super excited to be there,
Yeah.
but it was starting to dawn on me that this script was having real trouble. There seemed to be a lot going on that I wasn't aware of, and it was still amazing to work with Gene Hackman, and Christopher Reeve was just beyond lovely.
Yeah.
And But I could sort of tell because they're pros that they kind of figured out that something was amiss.
Mm.
And you can see it in small ways. Like we didn't shoot at Pinewood, we shot at the much smaller Elstree. Lovely studio, don't get me wrong, but not Pinewood,
Right.
we did the craft service table just got smaller and smaller, and the props were kind of falling apart in our hands, and there was all there was little clues that made me go, oh, something's amiss here. And unfortunately, by the time the movie came out, they had totally run out of money. Golan Globus, the company that made it, had all but collapsed at that point.
Mm.
And so they cut. They were supposed to do 6 months of flying work with Christopher Reeve, because those flying shots they make Superman.
Yeah, of
That
course.
was
Yeah.
the amazing thing. So instead of doing those 6 months of flying work, they just reused the same shot of him flying like four times in the movie, um, and just cut scenes. If they needed that, they would just cut it.
Mm.
So I was very sad because I had signed on to a movie that I was incredibly excited about, and it just came out to be one of the legendary messes of cinema. And it's kind of fun actually because conventions like comic book conventions still have panels about what a mess Superman 4 was. And there's a wonderful episode of How Did This Get Made about Superman 4.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a that's a legacy that I can look up to. But it was I like I said, I loved working with Gene Hackman. I loved working with Christopher Reeve. Um, and I still have good memories. Mark Pillow, who played the Nuclear Man that terrified you so much, he and I actually first saw each other for the first time in probably 35 35 years, 40 years.
Really?
Just a few weeks ago, they somehow managed to find the costumes we wore. They came up for auction, actually, and so that was yeah, it was crazy. So they got us back together to sort of promote the auction, and it was great to see Mark.
Absolutely. He actually signed that poster behind me of Superman 4.
Hey, he's a
Just,
he's a good egg, that
yeah.
Mark Pillow. He's a lovely, lovely guy.
And it's just part of my therapy getting over seeing it the first time,
Yes.
have it signed by him. He's not really Nuclear Man. It's okay.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Although having seen that film, I've since every time there's a problem in the world, I want to just do what Superman did and just throw it into the sun.
Yes, just
Such a
gather
great
up all the
solution.
nuclear
Yeah.
weapons and throw them into the sun.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah. Well, no, that was a question that sort of hung over the comics all through the Cold War was like, how
Mm.
come Superman doesn't fix this? And I loved that the story actually, took that into account, but then came up with a good answer, which was like, no, humans, you have to fix this.
Hmm.
It's up to you. And it was a worthy experiment, and I'm sad but I am glad that there is actually still a generation of children, some traumatized like you, unfortunately, but who actually liked the movie and didn't
Oh
realize
no,
that
no,
it
I did.
was
I actually loved
such a
it. I
disaster.
loved
Oh,
the
good.
idea that there was more Adventures of Superman. I would
Uh-huh.
still watch the film. I still, if I'm watching them, I'll watch 1, 2, 3, and 4. The third one for me is the weakest, except for Richard Pryor at the beginning, putting two keys in simultaneously.
Yes, he's great.
Yeah,
He is a genius. Well, I see that's the thing. I don't want to ruin it for kids who genuinely enjoyed it when they
yeah.
were kids. That my particular journey on it is less important than the audience's.
I don't think so because you were rehabilitated at the end of the film. I hope.
Yes, Lenny Luthor
Yeah,
was he was put in the boys' house of detention or whatever.
yeah.
Uh, I love that because I actually that was me actually flying with Christopher Reeve. Every time they said, "Oh no, we can use your stunt person," I was like, "No, you can't. It's gonna be me," which was great. And actually, one of the very first days of shooting, uh, they were shooting one of the final scenes of the movie, which is Superman catching Lex and Lenny Luthor. They're trying to hightail it out of Metropolis,
Yeah.
and he flies under their open top car, picks up the car, and flies away with them, flies them to prison. And so they decided to shoot that my first day of shooting. And but there was almost no trickery involved. They took a construction crane, attached it to an open top roadster, put Gene and I in it. Then they wired Christopher Reeve underneath it, and
Wow.
then they flew it away on a construction crane. Now they would never do this. Now
That
they would
doesn't
do it
sound safe.
all. No, it was not safe. But it was fun. It was an amazing way to start that particular job.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what an amazing experience, right?
Yeah, I have no regrets.
Well, except for you arranging for BT to install your phone and then they wouldn't tell you your own phone number. I must say, customer service in the UK has not improved since that point.
It hasn't. Oh, I'm
No,
sorry to hear that. I am sorry to
terrible.
hear that. No, British Telecom had just either it was about to be privatized or it hadn't quite yet. I mean, that was very controversial at the time.
Yeah.
This was 1986, I believe.
Hmm.
And so I just needed a phone installed in my flat, because so that I could talk with the production office and be, I
Yeah.
was going to be in Britain for 3 months, and so they installed it and then did not leave the number, so nobody could call me.
So
Uh,
helpful.
and yeah, in the book I relate this conversation, this very sort of Kafka-esque conversation I had with the British Telecom operator, because she refused to believe I was actually the owner of the phone for some reason, even though I'm calling her on it. She knows that, hopefully. But I guess she thought I was a burglar who snuck into somebody's house to use their phone in order to get their phone number.
That
I don't
happens
know.
so much.
Happens. I know it's a crime wave across the UK.
You didn't see it in the movie, but that's what was happening with the Wet Bandits in Home Alone. They were just finding out people's phone numbers.
Yes, because just
Yeah.
that's information that everybody wants.
Yeah. They're selling other people's data.
They were the first.
They were. It's outrageous. And so in 2019, you returned to that universe in Supergirl. How surreal was it to be invited into that world, albeit the Arrowverse at the time?
I had already admired the Arrowverse
Yeah.
because uh, they got the DC comics in a way that the movies were actually struggling with
Yeah.
at that point. They had a little more of a lightness and a sense of humor, and they really took great pains to weave all their shows together so
Mm.
that they were existing in the same universe. And I thought that was really fun. And although I did not in any way expect to be asked to be a part of it. It was a total fluke. I got a text from a friend of mine from my summer camp, actually,
Oh,
a guy
really?
who's not even he's not even in the business anymore. He
Amazing.
just texted me and said, "You what did he say? He said you're about to get a phone call that is going to surprise you a lot." And I was like, huh? I said, I'm already, and then I got an email from Bill Prady, who is one of the producers of The Big Bang Theory,
Yeah.
who said, you're going to be, they're going to be talking to you about a character that rhymes with Schmex Schmoother. I was like, okay, that does narrow it down a little
Yeah, to
bit.
at least five
Uh,
people.
Exactly. And then I got a call. Um, I got a call from a writer named Jessica Queller, who was the new producer on Supergirl, and she said, "We're trying to take Lex Luthor. We're trying to create our own Lex Luthor. So would you consider it?" And I was like, blah, blah. I was really taken aback. I had not, I'm not asked to play supervillains very often. Um, but it was only supposed to be a couple of episodes on
Right.
Supergirl, and and I was mulling it over, and then sadly, one of my counselors from my camp had passed away from Stage
Sorry
Door
to
Manor,
hear
had
that.
passed
Yeah.
away, and I went to the memorial service for him, and the deadline for saying yes or no to Lex Luthor was chiming down during the memorial service, and so my phone started blowing up as these people are memorializing my friend. But the memorial, because it was mostly actors giving it, went on for like 3 hours because we're famously long-winded and love talking about ourselves and people and so in the first couple hours I was able to ignore my phone.
Right.
Finally, in like when we hit hour three, I was like, I gotta answer this. I gotta take this. So I literally took the job during a memorial service, um, and I'm not proud of it, but I loved. As I said, I was a total comic book nerd, and so I actually really uh, cared about the history of Lex, and I cared about him as a character, and I was very excited because I knew the Arrowverse was going to do Crisis on Infinite Earths,
Yeah.
and that series of DC Comics just blew up the whole universe of DC Comics, and that was back in also around the mid '80s,
Yeah.
'86 or '87, somewhere around there. And so that was like this revelation of the comics that you could shake up all of your heroes in one series. And I thought, wow, if the Arrowverse wants to do that, that's really ambitious. And boy, I'd love to be a part of that. So I was secretly hoping when I did my 1 or 2 episodes of Supergirl that I'd end up in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right.
I did not realize that I'd be doing 2 or 3 more seasons of Supergirl. um, but Supergirl again, that set was one of the most fun sets I've ever been on. Just great, great people, uh, terrific writers, great crew, great directors, and it was just every day was a pleasure on that set.
It just occurred to me, by the way, that of course, because you previously played Lenny, you then went on to play your own uncle, Lex.
Yes.
But also, you starred in a film with your mum who played your auntie.
Yes, it's a twisted genetic world that I
Yeah.
live in. The Johnny verse is very has a lot of twists and turns. Yes, that was Hiding Out, a movie I made after Pretty in Pink. That I was it was the first movie I ever worked on as a producer, actually. And that was a big learning experience for me. And we were casting out of New York, and they were looking for somebody to play my aunt. And it actually was the director who said, "What about your mom?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, my mom's great." So, I didn't want it there's no nepotism involved. She just the director liked her. But Yeah, and I actually recently rewatched that because they're putting out a Blu-ray of
Yeah.
it. And it was interesting. It was when you watch stuff early in your career, there's sometimes where like Pretty in Pink, I watch it and I go, oh, I love the choices I made there. I made a lot of great choices.
Mm.
Hiding Out, less so. I watch it and I'm really rough on myself. Same thing with Superman 4. I watch it and it's hard for me to watch because I don't like the choices I made.
Really?
And
Why?
that just happens. Sometimes you just go, that doesn't feel like I went really jokey with Superman 4. I was sort of doing a little bit of a Crispin Glover imitation because
Right.
friend of mine had worked on a movie with Crispin Glover and said he's a genius, but he's bonkers. And so we used to just do Crispin all the time. And so I was doing that for the director, Sidney Furie, and he thought it was funny. So we stuck with it. And in retrospect, I wish I made a different choice because in the end ended up being kind of limited. Um, and with Hiding Out, there was just there was like I realize now that I was too young looking to do that movie.
Yeah.
At the time, I was actually 22, but I looked like I was 12, especially in a suit. One of the reasons that I wore a beard at the beginning of that movie was because when you put me in a suit, I look like I'm going to my bar mitzvah, and that was not the look we were going for. So we said, okay, we have to do something to age me up, and the beard was the only thing that really worked. Um, but then the beard presented its own set of problems, and then there was a lot of choices that in retrospect I go, oh yeah, uh, we could have gone another way there. but but at any rate, these are the things you learn with time.
The original Superman 4 script still exists. If they revisited it, maybe it's like an animated film or something, and then you could do your
Hmm.
alternate vision for Lenny.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, the original script, I don't have the original script. I have the oldest version I have was the first Pink Revision script, which was the first that one I read on the plane heading
Right.
over to London. That was the first one that made me go, "Oh, something went wrong here." Because the first one was written by this Mark Rosenthal and Larry Connor, who did
Mm.
Jewel of the Nile, and
Yeah.
they're wonderful, fun caper writers. And already I could sense that I was like, oh, hmm, these rewrites are not don't have the same je ne sais quoi. Uh, but again, that's the journey you're on when you're an actor. I did another movie right after Pretty in Pink that was originally called Homefront,
Mm.
and it was a very dark comedy, but it had a very sweet kind of treacly ending. And I
Yeah.
thought they're going to get rid of that treacly ending because you don't even need it. The dark comedy is the part that works.
Right.
But instead, what they did was they fired the director a week in and rewrote the whole movie to fit the treacly ending.
Oh no.
So the whole dark comedy thing went away, and so it was a totally different movie than uh, than I had signed up for. But I was stuck in it because I'm an actor. When you're on screen, you're stuck in it.
Yeah.
And you can't, like the director took his name off of it. He's, it's an Alan Smithy movie. But the actors are still front and center. Uh, and that one's called Morgan Stewart's Coming Home. But again, there are people that really enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
I don't want to destroy their enjoyment of it. But my experience as an actor was kind of tough on that.
Especially if you're excited and you've signed up for it and you've got this whole vision of what your character arc is going to be and
Yeah, yeah.
the thing you think you're making.
Yes, exactly. And that's but again, producers have to have that leeway to be able to make those changes
Yeah.
because otherwise, because I've been a producer and you got to make changes because the every day you shoot, everything changes a little. Nobody shoots exactly what they wrote. And even if they do shoot exactly what they wrote, they still get all kinds of you get nuances from actors. You get all kinds of production problems that force you to shoot things different ways.
Yeah.
And so you have to be prepared to to roll with it and to make the best movie with the things that you've actually created. And
Mm.
so producers do need that freedom. But for actors, it can be a raw deal sometimes.
I think everyone goes into a production with the best possible intentions and
Yeah.
tries to make the best decisions they can at the time. And if retrospectively you think I could have done it different, you only know that because you've seen the end product.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you just have to have peace with the fact that at the time you did your best to make it work. Everyone's trying to steer it sometimes in slightly different directions.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of which, so you mentioned earlier Crisis on Infinite Earths, and there was that scene with Tom Welling where you went to the Smallville universe and all
Mhm.
that good stuff. Now everything's being relaunched again by James Gunn. There's a new Superman movie coming out soon
Mhm.
in the summer. Would you be interested in possibly returning as another character, maybe Lex Luthor's granddad this time? We've had the nephew, but we've had Lex, his twin
Yes, the
brother.
beard and the
Yeah,
the wizened look.
like Lex from the future or something.
I'm happy to participate in the Superman universe in any way. Like I said, I loved the comics as a kid. I was actually a little more of a Marvel person when I started, but they were all great to me. And no, I love that stuff and would happily participate. I think I'm really hopeful for the next Superman movie. I love James Gunn. I've
Mm.
enjoyed his work for forever, and he's made so the stuff I've seen so far. He seems to get it in a way that's really fun, and I'm very, very hopeful for it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, I'll always show up on day one and, see all these movies when they come out. And I try not to get too excited about films or have too many expectations. I like just going in there fresh, not having seen too much and just
Hmm.
feel what I feel and then think what I think when I'm watching it. And that's what I think is the best thing to do.
Yeah, yes, exactly. To keep an open mind. I think
Yeah,
that's a great idea. And I think Nick Holt is going to be great. I'm very excited about seeing Nick Holt.
absolutely. It's going to be so much fun. Now, you first started with Charlie Sheen in Hot Shots and you played Jim, who had sadly a visual impairment. Do you think he was kind of born in the wrong era because obviously science has progressed now? Do you think there's been
Yeah.
any scientific developments with delicate corneal inversion procedures such as the multi-opti pupiloptomy?
Pupiloptomy,
Yeah,
yes. Hopefully they've learned to do that with lasers. Yeah, I have to say, Hot Shots was a script that was one of the that script made me laugh out loud like 5 times the first
yeah,
time I read it. And I couldn't believe that Sheen was doing a comedy like this. Because Sheen, up to that point, he'd done Navy SEALs and he'd done
Yeah.
Platoon and he'd done all these very serious movies. I was like, Charlie Sheen's going to be the star of this? Okay. But I really wanted to make fun of Top Gun because I did not love Top Gun. Unlike, and I understand everybody loved Top Gun, but me. I am the one guy who did not love that movie. So I was very much on board for making fun of it. But also it was fun to just make fun of war movies in general.
Yeah.
That was really their aim.
Yeah, there were so many great spoof movies in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that I kind of miss that now. There's not too many.
Yeah, well, it's a style.
Mm.
It's like actually, if there was Young Frankenstein, I think was kind of the first where it was like totally
Mm.
adopting the genre it was making fun of.
Yeah.
You know, um, but then Airplane just went totally like, okay, we're making fun of things in a way that one scene doesn't even have to relate to the next scene.
Right.
They're just such, everything's just so completely off the wall here. Everything's a visual pun. Everything's uh, and that was a new way of doing it. That was a legitimately completely new way of satirizing movies. And it was incredibly fresh. And there are a lot of great, Scary Movie I thought was terrific. I thought, there are a lot of great entries into the meta, let's make fun of a genre
Yeah.
type of movie. Um, but they are hard. They're hard to nail because you've got to take them super seriously, and you've got to cast Lloyd Bridges and Charlie Sheen. You've got to cast actors that people don't expect to be funny.
Yeah.
You know, because the more seriously it takes itself, the better it works.
You starred in the film Holy Man. You played Barry.
Oh my goodness,
I
deep
know
cut.
we've got to there now.
Okay.
Going to get even deeper now. So in that film, you are rocking a goatee. Can you tell me if you had the goatee when production started, or if you made the choice to have one, or they asked you to have one for that role?
No, I had a goatee in
You
my
had it.
just life.
Mm.
And they stuck with it. They just felt like it was right for the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was offered that part, and I hadn't been offered a part in a while.
Right.
Usually, sometimes you have to audition, sometimes you get offers. It's totally dependent on whether they see you as that part. Sometimes you have to prove it. Honestly, I'm more comfortable with proving it. I
Right.
like auditions because I like meeting the directors and I like talking
Mm.
to the casting directors and getting their input on where this character is supposed to go. Honestly, when I'm cast um, without auditioning, I feel like I'm surprising these people on the first day of shooting. Like that's when they're going to discover the kind of performance I'm going to give. So I like auditioning actually.
I mean, that's why I was
Um,
so grateful that you auditioned for this interview. You're
I
amazing. You
know.
did three
Well, I
rounds,
thought it
nailed
was
it.
a quite a vetting process, but okay,
Yeah.
I'm down with it.
I'm like, you
Uh,
knew the most about you. I'm like, you're definitely the you for this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. But no, but Holy Man, I wore a goatee. I had done a show. I can't remember if I did Partners with before Holy Man or after. I don't remember. I did a TV show in the States called Partners. And that was the first time I was goateed on film, I believe. But Holy Man was, a chance to work with Eddie Murphy and
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum and the writer had written like Dead Poet Society. I mean, it was like, okay, and Stephen Herrick was directing it, who had directed Bill and Ted, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be great. Um, but then we got there, and at the very, very first read through, and again, this is why sometimes auditioning is very valuable. I did not audition for this. Became clear that Eddie Murphy was not going to play the character the way that everybody, I think, reading it expected.
Right.
In the When you read the script, he was a fast-talking kind of con man, sort of the
Mm.
same guy Eddie Murphy was in in Beverly Hills Cop. And everybody says, okay, yeah, Eddie Murphy's going to run wild with that. He's going to come up with great stuff. He's going to um, and we got there and we realized, oh no, he's not doing that. He's going for Peter Sellers and being there. He wants to play this guy who everybody projects He wants to play the serene, holy man that everybody projects this stuff onto, which is it's absolutely a viable choice. It's just not what everybody expected.
Right.
So the movie became this whole other thing, and I that's one movie that's actually painful for me. I have not watched it since we did it.
Already?
Because no, I haven't actually. A guy who does a really fun podcast called Overhated asked me to watch it and then be his guest because Overhated is about movies that he thinks got a raw deal
Yeah.
that everybody hated,
Right.
but that shouldn't have been hated. And while I did an episode with him for Superman 4, as a matter of fact. That was a lot of fun. That was a movie that was like, you know what? I can't watch that movie. And I shouldn't. I suppose I should check it out again. But it was so surreal working on this movie that we were all just sort of going, okay, nobody expected this to be this. And now we've all got to kind of tap dance and see if we can come up with much more fun, antic stuff because the main guy who everybody thought was going to be the source of all the fun, antic stuff just doesn't want to do that.
Right.
Um, so it was very strange. But I got to work with Jeff Goldblum, who introduced me to Waiting for Guffman. So I will always be grateful to Jeff Goldblum for that.
That is always good. Yeah, I wanted to mention the movie because I remember when I first saw it, I was really pleased to see you in the film. And then I
Oh,
just
thank
thought
you.
I'd hold on to that for 20 years and then
And then I'll just hit him with that
yeah.
when we finally get to talk.
I need to make some kind of show so I can express this. I'll do several hundred
Yes.
interviews and then build up to
And
it. And yeah.
then we'll get around to it.
Ease you in with that vitamin stuff and the BT phone problems and then yeah.
Yes, yes. Ah.
So next I'm going to talk about Two and a Half Men. It was, of course, a massive hit around the world and is still played on TV all the time. You got your own Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. You won 2 Primetime Emmys, but can you tell me where do you keep them?
Where do I keep my Emmys?
Hmm.
Well, I've just got so many,
Yeah.
2 of them. I actually in my office I have a shelf that's up there, and they are there with my Saturn Award for Lex Luthor, and the People's Choice Awards that the show won, which were a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, it's I got a lot of storage issues because I just win so many awards, so many. That it's just where do you put them
Yeah, it's a
is the
problem.
problem.
Yeah.
Uh,
I have to
I,
underachieve just so that I don't fill my house up with a TV.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you get it. You get it. You
Mhm.
understand where
Yeah.
I'm coming from.
It's
It is funny
exhausting.
though, when winning an Emmy is a weird thing because you'd never, because I had been there. I'd been nominated like 4 times before I won. No, 5 times I think before I won. I won on the last 2 nominations.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd been there so often and lost so often that your brain just goes, yes, that is the normal state of things. I will not, I am never bound to win this, and that's fine. It's lovely to be invited to the party. So when it happened, your brain just doesn't believe it for a minute. And it's funny because I thought that I misheard what the person said.
Right.
I don't know if was it Amy Poehler who was was the presenter, or Julia Louis-Dreyfus, one of those two, and uh, and there was just this part of me that was like, did this did my brain just scramble it? And they didn't actually say my name, and I'm now walking up here in the most embarrassing fashion possible. Is that what's occurring? Because your brain just can't process it. My brain could not process it at the time. And you know, I thankfully had come up with something to say a few years before, so I used it then.
Yeah.
But I just, it's and it was kind of a lovely thing to go, oh, so there's gonna for me it was like, oh, someday it is gonna be you. someday you're going to have that piece of luck that you never expected. You don't, and it will happen to everybody at some point. They will get that piece of luck, you know. So I'm grateful for it, and I try to just, you know, be open to life experiences, and who knows what the next lovely piece of luck will be.
They were very well deserved and overdue, and I'm sure you're going to get a
Oh,
lot
thank
more
you.
of them. And at the very least, at least give you half of another one.
Yeah,
So you get two and a
that's
half. I
important.
mean,
For the half a man of Two and a Half Men, or,
yeah,
or yeah, yeah.
just as like a
Uh,
reference.
Again, it's the TV business is figuring out what it is now. It has really, it's just been an absolute upheaval for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what on earth is happening. And so I am glad that I got so many chances to work in TV before all this upheaval happened, because it was a little more predictable, as the business was. I mean, it was still ridiculous, but it was a little more predictable. Um, and I feel for young people just starting out into it, because there's no rules anymore. Everything's just so much crazier.
So you, at one point, filmed a scene as Alan Harper with Zach Galifianakis for the movie
Yes.
Due Date. Can you tell me,
Yes.
was that part of the just scheduled season of filming? Did you all get together especially for that?
No, that was part of basically the way we shoot the show is we do 3 days of rehearsal and rewriting. So Monday to Wednesday is rehearsal and rewriting, and then Thursday and Friday we shoot the show. Thursday we shoot all the stuff that we know we can't shoot in front of the audience. Sometimes there's like stuff in front of a green screen, or
Yeah.
stuff that's in a set that's too far from them. So we'll pre-shoot that, and then Friday we'll shoot the audience show, which is always the most fun. Um, but what we did with Due Date was we took a very long Thursday. Basically, we knew there were some scenes they wanted. We thought it was such a funny idea that this guy's mission in life was to come do Two and a Half Men. I mean, just thought that was the most ridiculous idea ever. So, but we knew we'd have fun with it. And Zach Galifianakis has actually done multi-camera sitcom before. I think he was
Yeah.
on Boston Common.
Mm.
So he actually was at 100% comfortable there. But he was lovely. And Todd Phillips, the director, was great and fun to talk to. And we tried to just enjoy the thing in the spirit that it was done, and uh, it's all history now. you know
True.
but it was weird to be a part of a show that was part of pop culture the way that show was. I'm glad for it. It's fun. Like I'll go places. I was having a layover in Germany, and everybody's like, Alan, Alan. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was visiting India, and everybody knew Two and a Half Men in India, and it's fun that it's touched so many people.
Is that the character that you get the most?
Yeah, yeah. But well, Ducky and Alan fight.
Sure.
Uh,
I'm sorry to hear that.
um, but yeah, but it's probably more Alan now. Yeah.
Mm. So going all the way back to your film debut, you starred in OC and Stiggs, and in your first scene you ever filmed, it was
Hmm.
at a wedding, and everybody gets covered in dove poo. And then
Yes.
in No Small Affair, you and Demi Moore crash your wedding because you've only got 50 cents and you can't afford any food. Incidentally,
Food.
I go back and watch everyone's everything. So I've had just an excuse to watch movies for 2 weeks.
That is bonkers.
I
That is
know.
bonkers. Thank you. I
It's,
haven't seen that movie in decades, probably.
it's fun. And so you crash this wedding, and you obviously the couple of strangers who you don't know all of their food and drink get very drunk. Then they
Hmm.
notice, and then Demi Moore has to perform on stage to pay that back. And then in Two and
Yes.
a Half Men, you of course got married to Ashton Kutcher. Can you tell
Yes.
me what is your favorite fictional wedding that you've ever attended?
That I've ever attended.
Yeah.
Hmm. Favorite fictional wedding. Uh, I gotta say it was probably well the Ashton Kutcher one was awesome because Michael Bolton was there. You know, when a man loves another man. It was great. But I'd have to say it was the first one. The first cinematic wedding I was a part of was that movie OC and Stiggs, and it was actually this was one of the lost Bob Altman movies. Bob Altman, is a brilliant director, directed MASH and Nashville, and this is one of his lost movies. You can't really there's DVDs floating around, but it's not something you can get. And I guess it's on Amazon Prime maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but it was his attempt at making a youth comedy, and he was attempting to satirize all of suburbia and America at the time, and and so he got together this nutty cast that was really really wonderful. Um, but it was always kind of a weird match because the original articles in National Lampoon were very sort of very snide, and Bob can be snarky, but it just wasn't humor coming from the same place for
Right.
some reason. So the studio freaked out and recut the movie. And this is Bob Altman. This is a guy who's, proven himself over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But he was in a career slump at that point. So the studio completely recut the movie and put it out. And but barely. They put it out in like 5 theaters, and it was a mess. And it never, everybody was kind of embarrassed by the whole thing. But what was great about it for me was my very first day of shooting with Bob Altman. And I've never worked on a movie at all. And he works very differently than most directors. Most directors, you have a script and you have lines and you rehearse the lines, you block the camera blocking so you know how you're going to shoot it, and then you shoot it. What he does is he sort of gets everybody into character, and then he has the cameras kind of a ways off. He mics up everybody, and he has everybody just go in and improvise it. Um, and that was super fun and scary. I thought, wow, this is how they make movies. Okay. But that particular morning, it was funny because they had to. The idea was that we were these rich people who were really jerks,
Yes.
and so the idea was that we come out of the wedding chapel all full of ourselves, just like yay, congratulations, and then a bunch of birds poop on us. That was the joke. But and they would release the doves in the shot every time we did it, but the doves wouldn't poop on us. They're just birds living their lives, and they didn't feel
Yeah.
like pooping at that time. So Bob Altman, esteemed director of Nashville, has to figure out, okay, how are we going to have the poop land on these people in a way that works? So he had a special effects guy perched on a tall ladder who was spraying, and no, that didn't work. The trajectory was all wrong. It looked like we were in some sort of poop storm, you know. So finally, Bob himself was like, "No, I'm going up on the ladder." So instead of like watching the shot, like Francis Ford Coppola, he's like, "No, no, the poop must be handled by me. I am the master." And he went up and started flinging the poop on the various participants. But what struck me was that all of us actors were trying to jockey to get in the way of the poop. We were hoping to get hit with this poop, and I thought, wow, this is a metaphor for show business. We all line up to get pooped on by Robert Altman. So it was very much of a learning experience for me. It showed me how the business was going to be for many years after that.
So when you said what struck me, it was bad poop.
It was bird poop.
It was bad poop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now I know people probably ask you this all the time, and I apologize. I have to ask you it. But would you consider reuniting with Charlie Sheen for another Hot Shots movie? And if so, what film would you like to spoof?
I would love to do. I would happily do another Hot Shots movie. I really enjoyed that. Sadly, Jim Abrams, the director, has passed away.
It has.
So it would be very hard to find somebody who had the sensibility. Um, but and working with Charlie, my understanding is that he's doing really well now. He is, I guess, sober. for a few years, and he's been living with HIV, and he's been taking care of himself a lot
Yeah, of
more.
course.
Um, and and I've had several people sort of reach out and say, "Hey, would you consider it?" And I have I don't have any animosity towards Charlie. But getting into a working situation that lasted longer than, say, one movie would be a mistake.
Right.
So, yeah, if there was a Hot Shots reunion, I'd consider it for, as a one-off. Um, but I wish him the best.
Which film do you think would be best to spoof? Say we had Top Gun and Rambo. What's the next
Uh-huh.
logical step?
What's the next logical step? Gosh, I
Mm,
guess like Zero Dark 30
yeah.
or, Hurt Locker. But again, those are serious dramas that I don't know how much parody would work on them. But who knows? Again, Hot Shots worked amazingly well.
It's very true. And arguably better than the film it was based on.
Yes, yeah. Same thing with Airplane.
Yeah.
It was
Oh
based
yeah,
on a
a
kind of
million times.
goofy.
So yes,
Yeah.
it's a lot less stressful to watch as someone that sometimes goes onto planes.
Yes. Yeah, I still enjoy flying. That's one of the few things that I went through a time actually when I was terrified of it for some reason. I just hit this weird patch where I was terrified of flying, and so I went to flight school, which
Oh
actually
wow,
helped. It actually does help.
that's
I didn't get
interesting.
my pilot's license, but just sort of learning the mechanics of everything
Yeah.
and sort of understanding how everything worked and how everything is geared around safety, and that these planes have amazing capabilities in terms of gliding, in terms of functioning. If they lose the engines or what get struck by lightning or whatever, you actually all the stuff they train you for in there does actually oddly put your mind at ease.
And also, if anyone ever says, "Can anyone fly a plane?" you can reply, "Kind of."
Yes, exactly, which is
Yeah.
what you want in an emergency situation.
I don't know if you ever saw the TV show Lost, but I was flying from the UK to America once, and they broadcast the first two episodes, which famously has a plane
That
crash.
a very realistic
Yeah,
plane crash. Yeah.
so
So,
I'm sat on the plane
yikes.
watching that, and after that, I just don't worry so much anymore.
Yeah. You're worried much more about being stuck on an island full of weird
Yeah,
phenomena.
I'm like, I'm just worried there's going to be an ending that makes sense. What is the smoke
Yes.
monster? All that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
smoke monsters.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's a question I ask every guest on the Sarah O'Connell show. Can you tell me a fun
Okay.
fact about yourself, a hobby, a party trick, something like that? Bearing in mind, I already now know you can fly planes.
I used to ride a unicycle when I was a kid.
Oh wow.
Haven't done it in a long time. But a fun fact, there was a little while where actors in New York, there was a couple of shows that incorporated circus skills. So all of us at once were learning circus skills. I was learning juggling and and unicycle riding. And it has never come in useful. Well, the juggling did actually. The juggling I did as Lex Luthor when
Yeah.
he finally got into the Fortress of Solitude with Supergirl. Uh, I was juggling some of these old like plasma grenades or something. That was fun. But the unicycling, not so much.
Well, that's it for the next Hot Shots movie, surely.
Yes, surely.
Yeah. Maybe they can speed Fast and Furious, but it's just you on your unicycle.
Yes, very slow and kind of wobbly.
And you've still got you're still vision impaired.
Yes. Wash out.
I'd
God
watch
bless
that.
him.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Why not? Why not?
I must thank you, by the way. I saw the interview you did with Bill Maher. I loved how eloquently you spoke up for the trans community. Trans people are going through a terrible time and often living in fear at the moment around the world. Have you got any messages for the trans community?
Well, yes, I just want to say to the trans community, we love you. You are there, you exist, You are real. Your needs are real. You should be able to play the sports you want to play. You should be able to join the military if that's what you want. You have served honorably and diligently and bravely in the past. We're grateful for all the things that trans people have brought to our lives. And you know, I am sorry that there are segments of society that have decided they just need to find somebody to vilify at this time. It's just not, you know, it's easy to vilify marginalized communities, and you know, I am sad and surprised at some of the people I've seen do it, but uh, you know, the the struggle the in America, the struggle for civil rights has been for, you know, 400 years. You know, I mean, we've had wonderful advances and awful setbacks, and we're still not getting it right. And You know, it is an awful struggle, but I hope that trans people will take the strength of knowing that we love you.
Very well said, thank you. Now, I mentioned earlier on that I love your memoir. It's fascinating, it's funny, it's honest, it's insightful. Highly recommend it. I listened to the audiobook version so that I could have you read it to me as well. And I love some of the voices and noises you made the book as well.
Thank
Highly
you.
recommend that.
Yes, the audiobook was great fun. It was I tried to write it in my voice, but obviously performing it in my voice is the ideal scenario.
Absolutely. How long did it take you to write?
It took me probably 7 months or so. I was terrified when I first made the book deal because I was like, what am I going to write about? Uh, you know, and the first thing I wrote was that long story about the play that goes wrong on the West End that I did,
Yeah.
when the play that went so horrifically, hilariously wrong. And once I wrote that chapter, that kind of the style of that and the sort of conversational style of it sort of dictated how I wrote everything else. Then I wrote the story about the first day on the shoot of OC and Stiggs, you know, and then it all sort of came together after that. But it took a while to sort of figure out what's my story, what's, you know, and I realized that my career was just this series of escalating surreal experiences in show business up until the final one, which is Charlie Sheen losing his mind on the show and it becoming an international shitstorm. So you know, it was my history of bizarre show business experiences. And what's been great is I've you know, a lot of young performers have told me that they really enjoy the book for that, because it helps them sort of understand how bonkers all of this is.
You speak about your experiences at auditions and just funny little stories about movies that, you know, some of your earlier movies that people may not have seen that will then inspire them to go and watch them and all that kind of stuff. It's a great, well, it's a great story. It's your life, but it's you tell it very well. It's
Oh,
like
thank you.
entertaining from
Thank
start
you.
to finish and highly recommended.
Oh, thank you. That's so. It's called So That Happened. If you're
It's very
looking,
true.
I hope you enjoy it.
And it did. I've gone and watched
Oh,
all the
good.
stuff. I can verify all the stuff you said is true.
Oh, good. Good. Phew. The fact checkers have
Yeah,
weighed
I
in.
go line by line, just ticking off, thinking, yep.
Yep. Yep. Right. Okay. There we go.
So you've got a brand new podcast that you're producing with a friend, a World War II themed podcast, The Man That Calculated Death. What can you tell us about this? I've heard a clip. It sounds fascinating. It's on Wondery Plus and Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. And it's about Suzanne Rico and her sister search for the truth about her grandfather's work and the mystery of her mother's death. What can you tell us about her grandfather and how did you first find out about this?
This is a crazy story, basically.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear about things in your life that you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what this story is, but I've got to do something with this because it's
Yeah.
so bonkers. Basically, a friend of my wife's is a woman named Suzanne Rico. She's a local anchor woman here on CBS, on the CBS affiliate.
Right.
She's, you know, a beloved lady on the news. We were having a dinner party with her one night, and she knew I was a big fan of the American space program and the Cold War and the space race and all that stuff. That was fascinating to me. And she sort of blithely mentioned, "Oh, my grandfather worked on the space program." And I said, "Oh, wow, that's crazy." She said, and I said, "What, who is he?" And she said, "Well, yeah, before that, he worked for Hitler." But anyway, she changed the subject, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what?" And it turns out that she had been having to look into her family history much more deeply than she had ever had to do before. Her mother had passed away recently, and her mother left an unfinished memoir. And her mother
Oh,
had actually asked her to finish it on her deathbed.
wow.
So it was this huge thing hanging over Suzanne. And so she had spent a couple of years going back to Germany and finding out her real family history. And she knew her grandfather was an inventor.
Mm,
Um, and she knew that her family had escaped from Germany after the war, but but she did not know that her father was a guy named Robert Lesser who invented the V1. He invented the V1 buzz bomb that terrorized England. He was one of Hitler's most important scientists. He ended up being smuggled to the United States in Operation Paperclip after the war. Um, so so she had found all this stuff and found out the truth of how the V1s were built and the camps that it was built in. And it's a horrifying story, sort of, going into your own family history and discovering horror. But she had always wondered, her mother had always been in this sort of PTSD state.
right.
And she'd always wondered what was the trauma that her mother had gone through. And it turns out her mother had been witness to her mother, Suzanne's grandmother, being killed in a mysterious bombing in a small Bavarian farmhouse at the end of the war that was never explained. And so Suzanne took it upon herself, in the spirit of getting closure for her mother's dying wish, to solve the mystery of who killed her grandmother. And who caused this familial trauma that just went down the generations. And she spent like 6 years, she and her sister Stephanie, interviewing family members and going through military records and she met with Holocaust survivors and has come up with this amazing podcast called The Man Who Calculated Death. And honestly, it's one of the things I'm most proud of that I've ever worked on. It's really a remarkable piece of work. And so, and it came out a couple of months ago. We got an honoree in the Webby Awards for Best Documentary, and then the Ambie Awards. It was nominated for Best Indie Podcast, and then it just won the Best Writing Award for the Gracie Awards. So it's starting to get some nice attention, and but again, it was such a crazy long process. I mean, we've
Yeah.
spent so many years working on this thing that it's finally out is just crazy to me.
So I'm going to go and listen to that this evening. It sounds fascinating, and I imagine
Well,
there's
it's
twists and turns and all sorts happening.
Yeah, it's amazing to realize that we're all part of history.
Yeah, of course.
We are all integral parts of it. And yeah, they write history books about some of us, but we're all processing these huge events and going through them in different ways. And it's her family story is just this amazing epic that he experienced going through some of the worst of humanity and then worked on the space program, arguably, humankind's greatest achievement.
Yeah, of
It's like,
course.
what, the highs and lows are just remarkable. And the first season is the family surviving World War II, and the second season, which we're about to start into production, is about them being smuggled to the United States and being a part of the space program.
It's incredible. How far ahead have you mapped out for this podcast so
Oh
far?
gosh, Suzanne does the vast majority of the work.
Mm,
I'm just there to say, hey, here's the part of the story that really works best. Hey, maybe you got to shorten that episode. Hey, it's Suzanne has done just hours and hours and hours of interviews and research, and so yeah, she has a very good idea of what the next what the structure will be. But you also just have to roll with what you get. Like, we didn't know she was going to solve the mystery. of Who Killed Her Grandmother. We didn't know she was capable of doing that, and she did.
Yeah.
So we had to. So once we knew that she got there, we were like, oh, okay, we have to change the structure of the podcast. But that was, that was one of the joys of it is going, wow, we found even more than we expected to.
Highly recommend everyone, once they've listened to your audiobook, go and start listening to this podcast as well.
Yes.
And I'm very much a
Yes, there's
binge
lots in the
listener.
queue.
Yeah. How many episodes are in season 1?
There are 9 episodes in season 1, plus I think 3 bonus episodes that haven't come out yet.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the second season we don't know how many there will be. Probably 6 or 7.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the great thing about podcasts is you can subscribe to them and then they just appear, don't they?
Yeah, that's why I love
Okay.
them. I'm absolutely addicted. Absolutely addicted.
Now, can you tell me what you're working on next, or things you may have filmed that haven't been released yet, perhaps?
No, I'm actually the last thing I did was Extended Family for NBC here in the United States. And yeah, no, I'm just waiting around for the next thing. That's part of being an actor. You just sort of you just got to surf the opportunities. So yeah, I'm just trying to do some fun stuff, have enjoy my birthday presents, stuff like that.
Dare I ask what they are?
I got an ionic foot bath,
Oh, wow.
which that's what my wife saw it on Instagram, and it's one of those things that it bubbles around your feet, and it supposedly pulls all the impurities out of your feet. I don't know that it actually does that, but I'm willing to try. Anything
Yeah.
foot related, I'm happy to try.
Absolutely. And if it works, you can put your hands in it, put your face in it.
Yes, it'll be great. Pull out
For a
the
few
impurities.
I was thinking, because you said you don't know what your next role is, you can maybe put your face on 150 taxis in San Francisco. It costs about $6,000, I think, and then
Yeah, why
people will
not?
phone you up day and night.
And just say, hey, what's up?
Yeah,
And that'll be the extent of it.
I think so. It worked for
Yes,
Demi
that
Moore.
seems totally worth doing.
Yeah,
100%.
I think so. Can you tell me what your Can you tell me what your career pinch me moments have been? Perhaps a project that you couldn't believe you're working on, or a person that you worked with?
Um, oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, I remember meeting Gene Kelly, who I had just worshipped as a kid. I met him at a tribute dinner to Janet Jackson, of all people.
Really?
Um, and that was just an amazing moment. I love old Hollywood. At one point, there was a magazine that asked me. They have a thing called inspirations where you get to choose who your inspiration was, and then they try to set up a photo shoot with you and your inspiration. And so I said Carol Burnett, who's a amazing comedian,
Yeah, of course.
and she said yes. And so that was a pinch me moment. Just that and we had a great time and took a bunch of goofy photos and uh, like after one of the Emmys, I met Mel Brooks, and that he knew my work and enjoyed it was just crazy. And working with Carl Reiner on Two and a
Yeah.
Half Men, that was just an incredible gift. He actually spoke at my Hollywood Walk of Fame induction, and I was like, oh my God, Carl Reiner is talking at my when I'm getting a star on the Walk of Fame. This is ridiculous.
I
We
love
have
that.
now crossed over into ridiculous. So I worshipped all those people growing up, and that I've been allowed to just be in this community just makes me feel incredibly lucky.
That's amazing. Have you ever kept any props or souvenirs or costumes from any of the productions that you've worked on?
Sure. I kept the Ducky shoes for a long time, and then I loaned them to Planet Hollywood, who promptly
Mm,
lost them.
they did.
Um, I still have one of the bolo ties from Pretty in Pink. Um, what else? I kept one of the clappers from Two and a Half Men. But I try not to. I don't. Stuff just ends up being stuff after a
Mm.
while, and so I try to like I have a plastic thing full of a lot of press stuff and fun stuff like that, just because I feel like remembering those moments is almost more important than having this stuff.
And so you've appeared in obviously loads of movies, but tons of TV shows as well. Stuff like Extended Family, The Kaminsky Method, NCIS, Will and Grace, Hannah Montana, Dharma and Greg. Have you got any
Yeah.
favorites and perhaps any shows that you watch and enjoy now that you'd love to appear on?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm loving a lot of the like what I would have given to have been in Succession. I love that show so much. Um, if they do an extra season, they won't.
Yeah.
It's a perfect show as it is. No, I loved doing Will and Grace. I loved that show. Um, I loved being a part of Hannah Montana. Being a part of the Hannah Montana universe was ridiculous. I had kids in that age range at the time, so you know, that was, uh, you know, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Uh, and NCIS started the same year the Two and a Half Men started. We both started on CBS the same year, and so we would always run into each other at all the network functions, and they were just this great group of fun people that that we would all just sort of huddle in one corner of the event and shoot the shit and tell showbiz stories. And I just had so much fun, and I loved the show NCIS because it was an old school police procedural, but just with really great fun characters. So they managed to do it. They managed to just really do it right. So I had for years said, I just want to be a dead body on your show. I want to die entertainingly in the first minute and a half, and then be a dead body for the rest of the show. And instead, the producers said, "Okay, we want you to be a heart surgeon who saves Gibbs's life." Uh, and I was like, "That's more than me just lying dead for the whole episode." But it was also great fun. It ended up expanding into like 3 episodes, and it was a character I really loved, and surgeon slash smart ass. And they would give me monologues to do while I'm performing surgery. I was like, you get that I don't know how to perform surgery, right? And so they literally, I spent time, I spent like an hour with a surgeon before I had to do it to learn what looks like surgery. um, and then I had to do a monologue while doing the things that look like I'm a surgeon. Thankfully, though, they did a fantastic job. I really look like I know what I'm doing, which is astonishing. So that was a great fun experience.
So what you're actually telling me is if you're ever on a flight and somebody says, does anybody know how to fly a plane and sort of look like they can do surgery? You can do both.
I'm your guy,
Yeah.
100% at the same time.
Yeah. On a unicycle.
And yes, and do a monologue.
Yeah.
Tell a story.
You've been training your whole life for this.
Oh, it'll be awesome. It'll be awesome.
So tons of shows get rebooted or revisited or revamped with the same cast these days. Rather than just pick some obvious choices, I want to go and ask you about some shows that perhaps you'd like to give another chance to that didn't live as long as they could have. Perhaps something like The Famous Teddy Z, Partners, Getting Personal, The Trouble with Normal. Which one of those do you think would be most interesting to return to?
Partners was just so much fun. It was written by the Friends writers right after they had their big hit with Friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And it had a very similar sort of vibe. In fact, Matthew Perry did punch up on our pilot. He came in
Really?
and threw in some jokes. Yeah, no, that I loved it. I loved doing that show. It was such a pleasure. It was me and a guy named Tate Donovan and a woman named Maria Patillo and Kathy Burns, and it was just everybody just had a great comedy gear, and it was just we did a whole season with Jim Burrows directing, who also directed Friends and Taxi and Cheers and Will and Grace, and he's just a legend, and he did almost our whole first season, and it was just one of those things that was just like everything's working, Jennifer Aniston came and guested on it. It was just like everything is working. And then it got canceled. And you're like, screech. So those are heartbreaking. But again, you got to be grateful for having the chance to have done them at all.
Yeah, of course. Have you got any tips for anyone that wants to get into acting that's considering it? The landscape changes all the time, but what do you think would serve them well?
Well, huh. Uh, it- Getting into acting now, obviously, it's harder to make a living, I think, because a lot of the TV jobs used to be the broadcast TV jobs, and there's just a lot less of them now.
Mm,
Their broadcast TV is making less shows, so and streaming TV is making some great shows, but they pay less than broadcast TV. So you gotta like you'd have to do two shows. You have to do a Netflix show and a Hulu show to make the same money you would have made doing one broadcast TV show.
right.
So it's harder now. But this business has always been dumb, and if you can and not fair, and if you can enjoy how dumb and not fair it is, um, by all means get into it because it will not cease being dumb and unfair. But seriously, if you can enjoy the silliness of it, and if you can somehow, just be sure to save your money. I think there's a lot of great opportunities in it now. I think actually what has been nice is sort of the democratization of art. Now you can make your own movie on your iPhone.
Yeah.
You can make yourself into a YouTube influencer. You can make yourself like, well, I'm telling you this, Sarah.
I can what?
I can't what?
I
But
don't really
you
see it
can
online. These are just for me.
you can make your own way. You can
Huh.
learn to be your own director. You can learn to, you don't need all the infrastructure you used to need. And that's amazing. That frees up the talent, the innate talent in a lot of people. It's unfortunately it makes that a lot of people can do this. So breaking through the fog is hard. But if this is your passion, you have tools that we only dreamed of. And if you really uh, can get into them and make use of them, you can really make your own way.
It's very good advice. Now, the next thing I'd like to say to you is not a question, but a statement. I
Okay,
love,
great.
I love your miniature Christmas villages.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good statement. I like that statement.
Hmm.
Thank you. I get carried away some years. Some years I just say I can't do it. It's just too much. I'm an artist and I need to recharge. But I enjoy them a lot, and whenever kids visit, they always lose their minds, and it's great. It's great because because they always want to grab it, and it's like, oh no no, it's fragile. But my wife loves it a great deal, and I always stress about it, but it's Christmas.
Yeah, it is Christmas. Last Christmas, I ordered from America a giant inflatable, I think 12-foot long Mariah Carey lawn ornament.
Of
But
course.
but the problem is I can't work out. I need some kind of power step down converter thing so that I don't set the house on fire. And apparently that's really important because a lot of these things do set on fire. So I'm
Great.
giving it another year until I debut my glow in the dark Mariah Carey inflatable thing that will take up
Uh-huh.
the entire house and all garden.
Great.
Mm,
Great. And you'll need an electrician, I imagine.
yeah,
Yeah, Merry Christmas. It'll be great.
I'm going to spend all year working on this. I'm really excited.
Yes. Well,
And
thank you so much, Sarah.
yeah, thank you
Now,
so much for your
unfortunately, I've
time.
got to go actually, but
Me too.
yeah, we're busy
Yeah,
people. We're busy people.
I've got to fly
But
to you to do the pickup shots.
yes, that's true. We got a lot of post scheduled. But it's been so lovely to talk to you. Really fun. I'm so glad you enjoyed the book.
Loved
And I
it.
hope you enjoy the podcast. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's very intense. Remarkable piece of work. And it's just been a real pleasure talking to you today.
Well, thank you so much. And a final question then. Have you got any messages for people watching the Sarah O'Connell show and your fans around the world?
Final messages?
Not
Yeah,
final ever, just like
yeah. Yes, and final. Am I? Do you know something I don't?
it's not a black box
Uh,
recording, you're fine.
no. Let's. We're in a world where because of social media, we've become really sensitized and sensitive, and we're aware of a lot of the pain of all of humanity is feeling, and it's easy to become overwhelmed. And but I hope people will still care and still try to be good and try to, on a daily basis, sort of look at their circumstances and say, okay, what is adding something positive to the world? That's what I try to do is try to say, okay, these are the gifts that I have. Can I add something positive to the world today? And I hope people take that to heart.
Well, you very much do. I've had so much fun just revisiting the huge body of work and discovering some movies and lesser known TV shows that weren't available in the UK at the time, but I've managed to find episodes online and all that kind of stuff. Jon Cryer, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody watching at home. Be sure to share, subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, and leave lots of lovely comments. And I'll see you all again soon for another episode of The Sarah O'Connell Show. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, I am Jon Cryer, and you should subscribe to the Sarah O'Connell Show. Trust me, uh, it's life-changing. Incredibly kind of you to have me, and best of luck.
Thank you
Okay,
so much for your time. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
bye-bye.